In the year 1716, France was bankrupt. The king was dead. The treasury was empty. The people were starving. 4 years later, in 1720, France was the wealthiest nation on earth. Servants were hiring their own servants. Chimney sweeps were buying castles. A new word had to be invented to describe this new class of people. That word was millionaire. They didn't conquer new lands. They didn't invent new machines. They didn't discover gold. So where did the wealth come from? It came from the mind of a Scottish gambler and mathematician named John Law. He was the first man in history to realize a dangerous, intoxicating truth. To create wealth, you don't need gold. You just need a printing press and a story. John Law was the father of quantitative easing. He created the first modern asset bubble, and today we are living in the world he built. This is not a history lesson. This is a mirror. If you understand the mechanism of the Mississippi bubble, you will understand why your neighbor is getting rich on meme stocks, why the stock market ignores the economy, and why, eventually, the exit door always gets locked. Why do central bankers, from John Law to the modern Federal Reserve, love printing money? They tell us it is to provide liquidity or stimulate employment, but the real reason is a psychological weapon John Law discovered in 1716. It is called the wealth effect. Here is how the mechanism works on paper. 1. The central bank prints money. 2. It buys assets, bonds, stocks, mortgage-backed securities. 3. Asset prices rise. But here is how it works in the human brain, and this is the part the charts don't show. When your portfolio hits an all-time high, a chemical change happens in your brain. You get a hit of dopamine. You feel rich. Because you feel rich, you spend money you don't have. You renovate the kitchen. You buy the luxury car. You book the expensive vacation. The GDP goes up. The politicians look like geniuses. But this creates a dangerous psychological trap. In a bubble, the definition of intelligence changes. In a normal market, the smart investor is the one who analyzes cash flow and value. In a Lawian bubble, the smart investor looks like an idiot. Why? Because the idiot neighbor down the street who knows nothing about finance is getting rich by buying the most speculative garbage assets. This triggers social proof and envy. There is no pain greater for a human being than seeing a friend get rich undeservedly. So you capitulate. You abandon your discipline. You join the party. You convince yourself that this time is different. You convince yourself that you are a genius. But John Law knew the secret that the crowd missed. You didn't get richer. The measuring stick just got shorter. The value of the house didn't go up. The value of the company didn't change. Only the quantity of the currency used to price it changed. You are experiencing an illusion of prosperity, fueled by the debasement of the unit of account. And like any drug, the high is temporary, but the withdrawal is fatal. Once the psychology is locked in, the financial mechanism takes over. John Law introduced a tool that every modern trader uses, but few understand the systemic risk of: leverage. In 1720, the Banque Royale would lend you money to buy Mississippi shares. Then you could take those shares back to the bank, use them as collateral, and borrow more money to buy more shares. Does this sound familiar? This is margin debt. This is the repo market. This is DeFi lending loops. This creates a reflexive loop. Rising prices create more valuable collateral. More collateral allows for bigger loans. Bigger loans create more buying pressure. More buying raises prices further. In this phase, fundamentals are irrelevant. PE ratios are a joke. The only thing that matters is liquidity flows. The market becomes a perpetual motion machine. As long as the money printer adds new liquidity, the loop feeds itself. Even assets with zero utility float to the moon. This is why shorting a bubble based on valuation is a suicide mission. The market can remain irrational longer than you can remain solvent, because the market is not running on logic, it is running on a mechanical loop of leverage. But every bubble has a pin. And contrary to popular belief, the pin is almost never valuation. Bubbles can stay overvalued for years. The pin is a specific event called a convertibility crisis. In 1720, the bubble didn't pop because the Mississippi Company reported bad earnings. It popped because a few smart money investors decided to cash out. They looked at their mountains of paper notes and realized, this is just paper. They went to the bank to convert their paper back into gold. This is the moment the system dies. The entire system relies on the faith that you could leave if you wanted to. But John Law had printed millions more notes than there was gold in the vault. When the crowd realized the gold was gone, the reflexive loop went into reverse. Selling lowers prices. Lower prices devalue collateral. Devalued collateral triggers margin calls. Margin calls force more selling. The stock fell 90% in months. The millionaires were wiping their shoes with worthless banknotes. Now pay attention, because this is the pattern for the modern era. When the exit door gets crowded, the state does not widen the door, they lock it. To save the system, John Law didn't admit failure, he attacked the exit. He outlawed the ownership of gold. He sent soldiers into homes to confiscate jewelry and coins. He imposed strict capital controls to trap the liquidity inside the failing system. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is the standard operating procedure of a failing fiat system. It happened in France in 1720. It happened in the US in 1933, Executive Order 6102. It happens in every hyperinflationary economy today. The trigger is not when prices fall. The trigger is when the state realizes it cannot honor the promise of convertibility. When that happens, your paper wealth is trapped. You might see a high number on your screen, but you cannot turn it into real wealth. So, knowing this, what is the strategy? In episode 2, we discussed defensive strategies for a decaying empire. But episode 3 deals with mania. In a mania, sitting on the sidelines can be painful. Your cash loses value while asset prices explode. As George Soros famously said, "When I see a bubble forming, I rush in to buy, adding fuel to the fire." This is the ride the bubble strategy. It is high risk, high reward. If you choose to play, you must follow 3 rules of engagement. 1. Watch the liquidity, not the earnings. Stop analyzing the business model. Analyze the central bank's balance sheet. If net liquidity is increasing, the feedback loop is active. You go long. If the printer stops, or if rates rise significantly, the loop breaks. You leave immediately. 2. The theory of reflexivity. Understand that in a bubble, price drives the narrative. As Bitcoin or AI stocks go up, the media will invent reasons to justify it. Respect the price action, but do not believe the narrative. You are trading a psychological phenomenon, not a fundamental shift. 3. The responsibility lock. Crucial. We need to be brutally honest here. Dancing near the exit is not for everyone. Riding the bubble requires emotional ice. It requires the ability to sell when everyone else is buying. Most investors are not traders. They are believers. They fall in love with the asset. They join the cult. And when the music stops, they are left holding the bag because they believed the story. If you have a full-time job, a family, and a mortgage, if you cannot watch the market every hour, if you have a history of FOMO, do not try to be George Soros. The most sophisticated move for 99% of people is to ignore the mania, hold the real assets we discussed in episode 2, and let the gamblers destroy each other. If you need leverage to participate, you are already too late. If you cannot walk away with a profit, you should not enter at all. John Law died broke in Venice, a gambler who flew too close to the sun. But his invention, quantitative easing, conquered the world. We are living in John Law's dream. The money is printed, the assets are inflated. The feeling of wealth is intoxicating. Everyone feels like a genius. Enjoy the party if you wish. Make your profits if you can. But never forget the lesson of 1720. The door to the exit is narrower than you think. And when the crowd rushes for it, the only thing that matters is, are you holding a promise or are you holding the truth?